is they saw out sections and re-pour it. So if they get a heave, they might cut half of this one, half of that one, split the difference. So if you drive, ready guys? Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting for Monday, August 26th of 2013. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado?
Here.
Mr. Capral?
Here.
Mr. Swikowski?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt, here. Mr. Verkest?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of August 12, 2013, approval of the bills in the amount of $844,264.67, approval of the July 2013 revenue and expenditures report, as well as the approval of the Lance Cruz High School 2013 homecoming parade route, scheduled for September 27, 2013.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Switkowski. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is the approval of our regular agenda. I heard no proposed amendments. If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Switkowski with support by Mr. York to approve the regular agenda. Is there any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next is announcements. We do have some announcements this evening. First of all, I'll stress the word free. The Harrison Township Parks and Rec Committee will be supporting the free event Park It on Tuesday, August 27th. That's tomorrow. Park It is a free family fun night at Waterfront Park. The event starts at 6 p.m. with music beginning at 6:30 p.m. by the George Brothers Band, as well as be followed by a showing of the movie Hotel Transylvania, starting at 8:15. Parkitforfun.com. That's a site you could go to learn more, and also for these events, there's information on the township website. Lake St. Clair Metro Park will be hosting the 4th Annual Boating and Outdoor Festival, September 19th through the 22nd. This was one time a big event in Harrison Township, and we've got folks working hard to build it up. Each year it's getting bigger. There's going to be, as I understand, a section for some of the local restaurants. For tickets and information, you can visit the website boatingandoutdoorfest.com. Construction will begin soon on the Metro Parkway Bridge over the Clinton River Spillway. Expected completion of the project should be toward the end of October of this year. A little bit of an explanation. There was some discussion about complete closure of one side of Metro Parkway. In fact, what they're doing is they're closing one of the two bridges that span, and they're directing one lane of the eastbound traffic over to the westbound side. So there'll be one open lane in both directions. So it might slow us down a bit, but the result is a new bridge over the spillway. For more information on all township events, you can always call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445, or of course you can visit our township website, harrison-township.org. Any other announcements, board members? Hearing none, we'll move into our next agenda item, item B1, a request from a trustee to approve the ZBA's recommendation to refund filing fees for two cases. Mr. Switkowski, did you bring that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At the August meeting, two cases were presented for variance for swimming pool. The way they were presented was for a front yard. But upon reviewing the ordinance, the lot lines, and the setbacks, neither pool would have been in the front yard. I understand, I talked to Mr. Witt, that this could have been handled actually administratively because we actually dismissed the cases before we heard them. So, but the motion was made at the meeting to refund the $400 filing fee for Deborah Millantoni, which was case number 08-13 ZBA, and for Brian and Lisa Kurtz, case number 09-13 ZBA. And I think the minutes reflect what transpired at the meeting.
Yep. So I understood that, and I know from time to time, sometimes a review of the cases and the information might lead to someone in the township offices to believe that a variance was required, but further review suggests that there was no
At
need
this
for a
time,
variance.
normally, I think it's probably been a practice that because, the front, being on a corner lot, you have two front yards, it was automatically submitted, but, in looking at the 30-foot setback from the front yard, the one pool was set back 70 feet, and the other was set 65 based on the drawings, so those were actually being built in the rear yards.
Gotcha.
So there was no need for a request for a variance.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the ZBA's recommendation to refund the filing fees for Deborah Millantoni, case 0813 ZBA, and Brian and Lisa Kurtz, case number 0913 ZBA, each in the amount of $400.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. We've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado. Is there any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda is item C1 from the clerk's office. Mr. Witt?
Yes, we have received a request from Luigi's for a new SDM, or Specialty Designated Merchant License, to be held in conjunction with their existing Class C license at Luigi's on Jefferson. All the necessary paperwork's in order in regards to the liquor license process. Basically, the purpose of this license is for them to, let's say you're in there having dinner and you really like the bottle of wine you had and you'd like to take one home, you can have one. They can sell you one. Right now, they couldn't sell you that. Or if you call and order a pizza or something to go, you can say, hey, I'd like a bottle of wine, or I'd like a sixer of the craft beer you have on behind the bar. So this will allow them to be able to expand that, make a one-stop shop. And I know the petitioner's here today if anyone has any questions, but.
Okay. And I know there's more and more restaurants offering that service, so just to remain competitive, it's probably something that they may want to do.
Yeah, so I'd make a motion to recommend approval for the request from Luigi's Enterprise Incorporated for a new SDM license to be held in conjunction with their existing 2013 Class C license located at 36691 Jefferson, Harrison Township, Michigan, Macomb County.
I'll support that.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion, board members. Hearing no discussion and seeing no public comment, does that require a roll
Yes, it
require a
does.
roll call? Mr. Witt?
Yes, Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Swikowski?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Motion
Motion
carries.
carries.
Good. Okay, well, good luck to the folks at Luigi's. Look forward to, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
was getting excited there. They said, Adam was saying that they were giving away wine with you.
Yeah, you started that out.
I was getting
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, I was gonna call for an early recess there. Okay, all right, next on our agenda, item D1, regarding a resolution for the Michigan Committee for the employer support of the National Guard and Reserve on behalf of the Charter Township of Michigan. Board members, Harrison Township is certainly closely linked to probably our largest neighbor, and that would be Selfridge Air National Guard. I think it is important that we recognize and support those that defend our freedom. I recommend adoption of a resolution and the signing of a statement of support for the Michigan Committee for the Employer Support of the National Guard and Reserve. I'll read that resolution, and I'd also like to invite up to the podium a representative to also address the board and residents. The resolution reads as follows. At a regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Harrison on Monday, August 26, 2013, this following resolution is proposed and hopefully adopted. Whereas the National Guard and Reserve is a respected and valuable branch of our nation's defenses, and whereas the National Guard and Reserve provides a high level of military proficiency at a lower cost than the primary branches of our military, and whereas the National Guard and Reserve is comprised of citizen soldiers who pride themselves in their ability to be available for service on short notice, and whereas the National Guard and Reserve deserve support from the community and their employers. And now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to thank our employees and residents who serve our country through the National Guard and Reserve, and encourage employers to support these citizen soldiers through fair and equitable employment practices. We have Michael Poplinski here, former commander of the base, but we're also fortunate to have him here representing the employer support of the National Guard and Reserve.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Trustees, good evening. For those who aren't familiar with the employer support for the Guard and Reserve, we're a Department of Defense office, part of the Reserve Affairs, and we've been around since 1972. And there's probably few here who can remember what was significant about 1972, but that was the year the draft went away. And in the post-Vietnam era, the thought was that our nation was going to depend more on guardsmen and reservists on the front lines than had occurred in the past, and that has held true over the last several decades. The employer support of the Guard and Reserve, we have volunteers, almost 5,000 across the states and territories. In Michigan alone, we have 125 volunteers. They come from small business, industry, government, education, prior military service like myself, and they bring a vast wealth of experience in assisting and serving employers who have service members and families in their employ. ESGR has served the country for more than 40 years, fostering a culture in which all employers support and value the employment and military service of members of the National Guard and Reserve of the United States. And this is probably the most important thing that I've got to say here tonight, is that these citizen warriors could not defend and protect us at home and abroad without the continued promise of meaningful civilian employment for themselves and their families. What we've seen over the years, in my experience, during the economic turmoil, is that people will go find jobs. And when they do, we lose their military service within the state. And as a reminder, there's some people that, to bring out the point about the Guard, don't forget that the Guard is also part of the governor's first response. On a day-to-day basis, the National Guard in this state, their commander-in-chief, is the governor of Michigan. And during time of war, when they're sent overseas, or they're federalized, then it becomes the president. But on a day-to-day basis, they serve us here within the state. So just to finish up the statement of support that Mr. Verkes has in front of him, that's a statement of support. It is a cornerstone of our effort to gain and maintain employer support of the Guard and Reserve. And we encourage employers to act as advocates for their employee participation in the military. Supportive employers are critical to maintaining the strength and readiness of the nation's Guard and Reserve units. And for those, I know that we probably have, I know that Harrison Township is an employer of guardsmen and reservists, and I know that there may be many other employers with that status across Harrison Township. So if you would please advocate on behalf of guardsmen and reservists to those employers. So thank you.
Thank you. In addition to the resolution, board members, we also have a statement of support that hopefully this board will agree to sign and display, and I'll read that statement of support. We recognize this is the Charter Township of Harrison, recognizes the Guard and Reserve are essential to the strength of our nation and the well-being of our communities. In the highest American tradition, the patriotic men and women of the Guard and Reserve serve voluntarily in an honorable and vital profession. They train to respond to their community and their country in time of need. They deserve the support of every segment of our society. If these volunteer forces are to continue to serve our nation, increased public understanding is required of the essential role of the Guard and Reserve in preserving our national security. Therefore, Harrison Township joins other employers in pledging that we fully recognize, honor, and enforce the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, USERRA. Our managers and supervisors will have the tools they need to effectively manage those employees who serve in the Guard and Reserve. We appreciate the values, leadership, and unique skills service members bring to the workforce and will encourage opportunities to hire guardsmen, reservists, and veterans. And we will continually recognize and support our country's service members and their families in peace, in crisis, and in war. So I would be looking for a motion to adopt the resolution as well as sign the statement of support for the Michigan Committee for the Employer Support of the National Guard and Reserve.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Capral. Discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. York,
Yes.
Mr. Capral,
Yes.
Mr. Brado,
Yes.
Mr. Swigowski.
Yes.
Mr. Tominello.
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkust.
Yes.
Resolution's adopted.
Thank you, board members. Perhaps, Mr. Brado, we've been requested to display this letter of support prominently. Perhaps after the meeting, I might be able to pass it off for a
Sure.
nice framing job and.
Absolutely.
Well, beautiful, thank you, we appreciate that. Figured it'd be easier if I asked you right in front of the.
Sure.
Can't say no in front of the camera.
But we do appreciate that, and thank you for that help. Next on our agenda is item D2. Enter into 3 cost-share agreements with the Macomb County Department of Roads for concrete repairs on Coleridge and Shoreline, East Archer Bridge over the canal, and Camp Street Culvert. Board members, there are multiple road projects here before us that need attention. The Macomb County Department of Roads has agreed to share some costs and apply for grants for other projects, as well as provide engineering and construction management. They've asked us to enter into a cost-share agreement. All costs are estimates. Well, 2 of the costs are estimates. Concrete repairs on Coleridge and Shoreline. Our share is 50%, dictated by state law for local roads. The East Archer Bridge over canal. This is the lowest rated bridge in Macomb County, meaning the greatest in need of repair. It is the most structurally deficient bridge in Macomb County. As such, it qualifies for federal funding, but there's still a requirement for local match. MCDR, or the Department of Roads, is willing to split that local match. And then finally, the Camp Street Culvert. This is specifically a drain at Camp and South River Road. It requires to be rebuilt, and we have funds available from our CDBG reimbursement. The drainage will improve, the culvert will improve drainage on Camp Street and along South River Road. That share is 100% ours. I'll expound if I can. First and foremost, number 1 is concrete repairs on Coleridge and Shoreline. A little misleading. Shoreline is actually an asphalt road. The repairs are Coleridge specifically, but they're Coleridge nearest to the intersection of Shoreline. The Department of Roads had approached me on that, and based on the cost share of $1,300, I had authorized for that work to proceed. They asked for an agreement, but because I was bringing other items before the board, I wanted to bring that to the board, but it falls within the $2,000 spending limit, and that was a 50% match. We had received complaints from some of the residents. This is in the area in front of Maple Forest condos. There was a lot of concrete heaving, and folks had asked for the repairs. The Department of Roads had scheduled that in this year's concrete restoration projects, and the $1,383 is 50% of the actual cost of that work. Second is the East Archer Bridge over a canal. You may recall during one of our earlier workshops, I had indicated that the Department of Roads had approached us on this project. The project qualifies for federal funding. There's a specific name, and I'm not going to remember it, Super Bridge or some snappy acronym, but basically it's a similar fund that was used for the Bridgeview Bridge restoration. In fact, the federal program pays for 95% of the cost of construction. But the 5% cost is the local match. Half of that share, as well as the other half, our half is 2.5%. Macomb County Department of Roads picks up the other 2%. We are responsible, I believe, for the engineering, and some of the local costs relative to construction management. The Department of Roads offers that at their cost, but we share that cost with them. So their estimate for that project is $88,000. I'd like to come back to that. But then the third project is the Camp Street culvert. During phase 2 of the bike path construction last summer, the engineering for all of the drainage along the sidewalk portion of that construction, you may recall we connected the sidewalks from just past the river at Emmerich and South River, all the way around the corner to South River and Jefferson. Along that area, all of the ditches were pitched to go toward Camp Street because there was a road crossing under South River that flows actually to the deserted right-of-way where Camp Street, if it were to continue across South River Road, Camp Street was actually platted to go all the way to Riverside Bay Court. But over time, that crossing was abandoned. So there is a right-of-way there that's preserved for a drain. The problem is, over time, that drain is filled in just due to natural settling of land. But even more so, the crossing underneath South River Road that would go from, we'll say, the south side toward the north side, ultimately flowing toward the Clinton River, for whatever reason, many years ago was pitched to flow from north to south. So what we've got, in essence, is at Camp Street and South River Road, we've got water flowing from the west along the sidewalks that were installed, from the east, coming from basically Jefferson and South River, and Camp Street itself flows in that direction, and there isn't a lot of pitch there. We've got residents on Camp Street calling saying, what can we do about the drainage on our road? Well, the Department of Roads said, well, we can clean out the ditches, but once it gets to South River, everything's pitching in the same direction. Department of Roads had asked for our participation for the road portion of that construction, which was to cross South River Road to get the water to the north side of South River Road. From there, they have a right-of-way to take the ditch to there, over to Riverside Bay Court, and then actually out the Chart Street right-of-way, which already exists. There's a drain there. I mentioned the CDBG reimbursement. This board may recall that I think on the last segment of the project, we did this board many years ago agreed to provide the 20% match for the construction of the bike paths and sidewalks for the whole project. But all of the work that was in the south end of the township fell within that CDBG area that qualified for the funding. So while the board had agreed at one point to provide all 20% of the match, I believe I'm going $560,000, it was half $500,000, roughly. We were able to receive in reimbursement over $140,000 for our match at the south end of the township, because the work that was down there, we in essence didn't use the funding source of the 80-20 match for the federal project. We used CDBG dollars there. So we have money that was ultimately allocated for the bike path that's been refunded toward us. So I'm saying this board has in essence already approved to spend more than we need to because we've received some refunding. So that was the explanation, at least. It's understood we cannot spend CDBG dollars at any other area than an area that qualifies. But when this board agreed to spend monies there, we were able to submit that and get reimbursement, so it reduced the amount that we've already committed to. So the concrete repairs and the work at Camp Street, I think, are pretty clear. I can tell you from the phone calls that I receive when we do get a high rain event, Camp Street is an area that is in need of improvement of the drainage. And I do believe this project is a big part of that, and Department of Roads agrees. So those two are kind of one issue that I'd like to set to the side. The second issue is the bridge on East Archer. On one hand, because of our partnership with the Department of Roads, we have an opportunity to do a project, and I know we've got a cost estimate there in here. Just the construction estimate, just in terms of the cost share, when we look at the breakdown, the total project cost is $680. The federal funds are over $500,000. So a significant portion of the cost of this comes through a federal grant. We do have the opportunity ultimately, of course, to refuse that grant, but if we were to try to have any other method of constructing these bridges, we, in essence, would lose out on that federal funding. The concern that I have is that we have this bridge, and the engineers at the Department of Roads have basically analyzed or, checked out all the bridges, I'm looking for the right word there, and they've determined this is the first one that needs to be done. There are as many as 4 other bridges in this neighborhood that are also in need of a various level of repair. So this is the one that Department of Roads says you gotta do this one first. It's the one that's least structurally sound. The concern that I have is this board can look at that cost share for this issue, but we know that according to the highway engineer, he's looking to apply for a similar grant in future years for some of the other bridges. Before I brought this to you, I did work with the highway engineer and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality to see if we had any options other than a bridge. This bridge is the first bridge when you come off of South River Road, as some folks call it Moon Street. So right when you come off of South River, you have a bridge, then you have East and West Archer as you lead into the neighborhoods. This bridge is not a navigable bridge. So whether it were a bridge or a road wouldn't make a difference for anyone having canal access. The Department of Environmental Quality made it very clear that in order to go from a bridge to a road with culverts, the amount of studies that they'd require and issues relative to the reproductive nature of fish and circulation becomes pretty lengthy. Also, a little concerned that if we do put a culvert there and it slows down whatever circulation those canals get, I'd hate to be 10 years down the road and have water stagnation and so on and so forth. So we did explore some of the options before we came forward with this. What I would like the board to consider is that we look at funding for this bridge, we look at the process of doing so, with the understanding that if there are as many as 5 bridges that could be replaced, we participate in the one, and then at some point introduce to those folks in that neighborhood that in order to pay for all 5 bridges, I think is a bit burdensome for the general fund. So I know that I've talked to some of the folks in the Huron Point Homeowners Association. A big concern to them, of course, is the first Lakeshore Bridge. Could it be raised? Could we get more access? Because there is one section of canal where those folks are sort of landlocked, and the higher clearance on that bridge means access to a greater sized boat, maybe widen that canal because the abutments come in quite a bit. And there's an opportunity there, but the larger that bridge gets and the more expansive that project gets, the more expensive it gets. And I believe it's fair for this board to consider to say, well, we'll take on one bridge from the general fund. But 4 more, you guys have to look at maybe some sort of an SAD approach or something to where it's funded, because those bridges don't really serve anyone except the folks in that immediate neighborhood. So I'm struggling with a balance of saying, perhaps in another neighborhood, we say, well, we'll fix the culvert in this neighborhood, or we'll agree to participate in concrete restoration in this area. The Huron Point Homeowners Association went through and assumed a pretty great cost to improve the drainage and rebuild all the roads in their neighborhood, and they took on that task themselves. I don't feel that it's fair that the general fund doesn't assist in some project, and I believe that this federally funded money, getting $500,000 of federal dollars to rebuild that bridge is mighty attractive. But I believe that the board has to say, we've got to draw a line on how much of those projects we can take on, because those bridges really do serve the local neighborhood and not necessarily the community as a whole. So I think there's a finite amount we can contribute. But on this one, I'm struggling with saying, well, if we rebuild this bridge, I can't say that we're gonna do the next four. I don't know that that's a fair expenditure of general fund dollars. So the first two I don't have any concerns about, but I just wanted to give, I guess, what I felt was kind of some kind of an explanation on this bridge, because of course the cost is significant. So that's my explanation. I'm hoping for some feedback from our board members. Or a motion.
Well,
To make a
I
motion.
guess
to-
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm confused, dictated by state law, is there,
The county cannot pay for 100% of local roads. They have to have a match in dollars. The most that the Macomb County Department of Roads can pay for a local road is 50% of the cost. Collector roads, the larger that the road gets, they can assume that cost, but it's 50% of the cost of roads per state law. It's,
did you have them forward that law? Just, I'd like
yeah,
to
it's
see.
from 1951. I don't remember the name. I don't remember the specific public act, but certainly can do that. Yep.
Well, what's funny about that is, several years ago on North Point, Mr. Hoffner stood right at that podium, and I asked the question to him. I was not on the board, I was just a resident at that time, and I asked, when the collector road in front of my house goes bad, or what I call the freeway, goes bad in front of my house, who's gonna be responsible for that? The homeowners or, and he sat up there and said, oh, the county will be responsible for it 100%. So I'm a little confused if.
Those
the
are
laws
two different
from-
roads. That's a collector road, like you just said, as opposed to a local
Well, I
road.
understand that, but he said the bigger the road, a collector road is just one step road higher than a
Right.
local road, so.
There's local, collector,
So-
there's regional, they have a
Oh, no, I
series of
understand.
names.
Some are run by the state. We know over here on the, by the freeway there, the state came in and they stopped their road right there right on the,
Exit ramp?
yeah, on the exit ramp there. And
Right.
going thump, 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 nice and smooth.
Right. Right.
And, on that project, they came in and said, hey, township has to pay half. Board said, no, that's not our responsibility, and they ended up fixing it for free. So I'm just looking out for our money and,
Oh, sure.
while, I agree that these bridges are bad. This bridge isn't the first time I've seen this. This bridge has probably been on the docket for 8-9 years. And I'm just wondering how much is the county just trying to get a little extra juice out of us, and if we're responsible, no problem, I'll pay for that. I just want to make sure that we're responsible.
I think I read somewhere that this bridge is the worst bridge in Macomb County.
Yeah, absolutely, yep. This federally, this amount of federal dollars available for bridge reconstruction, these dollars have been spent, I should say, I can only speak for Macomb County. The Macomb County Department of Roads has gone through the process of addressing these roads in other areas in the county. And I can kind of understand their point that if they've got a road that's, say, 23-mile road across a creek somewhere, that road is a road that services a great number of people. These roads are really about as local as you can get. But we are in a waterfront community in a unique spot where local roads involve bridges. And the thought of being able to get such a large portion of funding from the federal government is attractive to me. As I've said before, I kind of liken it to going to Art Van, and if you buy the couch, they give you the TV for free, and you say, wow, what a deal. Well, you've already paid for this TV. That $500,000 of federal dollars, they're already our dollars. They didn't come from outer space. They came from one of our pockets, one way or another, or our employer or somebody. But in order for us to access them, we have to participate. So I struggle with saying no, but I also recognize that there's a lot of future work beside just this bridge. And I believe it's reasonable to represent everybody to say, well, we're going to spend a certain amount of money in every neighborhood to be able to get the best possible deal. But moving forward, we're going to reach a point where I'm going to have a hard time turning around and spending $90,000 3-4 more times, and someone saying, well, wait a minute, how come you didn't spend $400,000 in my neighborhood? So there are neighborhoods where we have made improvements. We have participated in road improvements, or we've we've done drain cleanouts, or we've done a culvert crossing, or we've added bike paths, or whatever that local project is. So it's hard for me to say that I'm going to ignore an entire group of taxpayers that have in essence allowed us to accumulate that general fund. But I can't say that I can justify saying, well, we're going to do this 4 more times and reach a point where it's unfair.
So, Mr. Supervisor, I guess my question would be, and I don't know if this warrants discussion now, because it's future, and I don't want to veer too far off of the agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my question to you is, whose responsibility is it? Is it the road commissioner or the township if those bridges come down, or if they're deemed a disaster, people can't get to their homes?
Correct.
So whose responsibility is that?
That is a great-
Is that the homeowners, or is that the road commission, or is that the township?
Right.
So.
That's a great question.
The only thing I'm saying is be careful that you're saying, I don't want to give other, we have grants for all those bridges.
Oh, understood, and we can
Right?
still get those grants.
Exactly.
Right.
So the only thing is, I'm just saying, you're basically out here saying, well, I don't think we should give this, they have to share it to get to their homes. I think you're not going in the right direction there.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we don't apply in the future for the grant.
I think we should.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. My problem is, let me take it from another angle, okay? We talked about that first bridge on Lake Shore, right? And that is probably, for a lot of homeowners, that's gonna be a very sensitive issue. In the short term, folks have driven over that bridge enough to say, yeah, we know this bridge needs repair. We've seen guys pouring in cold patch all the time, and it's understood that that bridge needs structural improvements. The problem is gonna come in this. There's gonna be a group of homeowners that say, hey, fix that bridge just the way it is. Just repair it, make it structurally sound. But there's gonna be another group of homeowners whose only access to the lake is under that bridge. They're gonna say, no, take the abutments and move them back a good 50, 60 feet per side. Give me a little circle loop road underneath there, and take that bridge, raise it up about 6, 8 feet, and take the span of that bridge and spread it out a couple hundred feet so I can get my boat out of there. Well, that's great to the guy who wants to get his boat out, but the guy who says, well, I don't want to
then-
look at a bridge in my front yard,
I
what I'm
get it.
saying is we're going to reach a point where that's an issue that should be local control. And when someone says, well, we can rebuild it for 80,000, no, let's spend 200,000. I don't know that that's a choice that I should be
The
deciding.
difference, then, I would put that burden back on the homeowners.
Correct.
If in fact that they want.
Right.
But repairing something apples to apples so people can get to their homes, we need to take that responsibility and make sure that we follow through with that.
Well, and the part of the problem is, but we don't have the funding over
get
the, and there's roads that are worse than those bridges. It's just that if the bridges fail, you fall in the water.
Right.
So I mean, we have,
Yeah.
if it
Or you
wasn't,
don't get to your house.
Right.
If it wasn't
But
for a
there are
bridge,
folks
it's,
in other communities or in other neighborhoods that are looking at roads that are being treated as dirt roads that were at one
I
time
totally
paved.
understand that.
So what
But
I'm
they can
saying is
still
we're-
get to their houses.
Understood, but well, some of them drive through an awful lot of standing water.
we could
at
install
several
a
times.
ferry system across there.
My point is all I'm trying to say is, I wouldn't have brought this cost share if I didn't think it was the responsible and financially wise thing to do at this time. This project isn't even slated for being awarded until 2014. But in order for them to secure that and agree to accept that grant for 14, he had to ask me for a letter of support, and I brought it to a workshop and talked to the board, and I said, hey, anytime I can get $500,000 in grant money, I like it, okay? So it's up for now signing the deal, and they said, all right, you're gonna be in on the cost share. I'm bringing it to this board because I think it is responsible to participate in this cost. But I'm also proposing that a year from now, or 18 months from now, when that next bridge is available for reconstruction, I think if we say, all right, maybe the Department of Roads says, well, we'll do 3 bridges. All right, I covered the costs on one, but I believe that there's a need for local communities to participate on their own roads, similar to the way we have SADs for dredging canals, or we have SADs for repaving roads in an older community. We say, all right, well, we'll try to do our part. Maybe we don't charge interest, or we try to do some participation. I think it's fair for us to participate in this project, but I think we also have to look at, in the future, when this same issue comes before us, I think there's a finite amount that we can promise to spend from the general fund for each neighborhood. It's just hard to say no to $500,000 of a grant for 80-some thousand dollars in participation.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to authorize the supervisor to enter into 3 cost-share agreements with Macomb County Department of Roads for concrete repairs on Coleridge and Shoreline, East Archer Bridge over Canal, and Camp Street Culvert.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
All right.
But I do agree with Larry. I think we should cross that bridge when we get to it with the others.
I understand.
We should discuss
What
it
I'm
now.
saying is this board needs to be aware of the fact that we're gonna be,
No pun intended.
we're gonna be crossing that bridge coming up, and that next sticker might not be 88,000.
Right.
It might be 100,000,
Could
but
be.
the local improvements might lead to say, oh, no, if you guys wanna do that, the price has gone up. And I don't know where that line is, but I'm concerned that I gotta
Yeah,
represent the
local
guy in another
improvements,
community.
Mr. Supervisor, I would think that has to be negotiated with the homeowners, absolutely.
That's all I'm saying.
But basic services, right, basic services, roads are basic services, across the board is our
Right.
responsibility.
Right. My only fear though, and I appreciate that, but one street over from me, folks on Cloverleaf there, they got a pretty rough road. If I got a bid for the Department of Roads right now and they said, oh, well, heck, we can redo it for 150, your share is only 75, I don't want to be in a position I'm saying, well, gee, where's my 75? You spent 80. In other words, we are working with the engineer on how we might address local roads in general. This is a great deal, but I'm gonna reach a point where I'm not comfortable saying we're just gonna keep rolling and all this. That's all I'm trying to say, and trying to
But
be fair.
even as part of a great deal, I mean, is there any way to institute a SAD for a portion of it, or all of it?
Right, and the short answer to that is yes. We could do that for the future matches and still qualify for the grant. If we say we're taking 88 grand from the general fund, well, I feel pretty confident that the folks that live in that community helped us build the millions we have in the general fund. It's fair to share 88 grand, but I don't know if I want to share $500,000 over a 3-year period. I don't know that they put that much in. So what I'm saying is it could be a year from now that we look at an SAD for that match, and just doing the math, say you got this was 88,000. You got 3 more bridges, 3 to 4 more bridges at 100,000 each. There's about 800 homes in there. You know, for about $100 a year for 5 years, all those folks have the brand new fanciest bridges they got. I don't know that that's burdensome to ask for them to participate at that level. I mean, it's just round numbers.
Okay.
But, you know, that's a similar match that folks in other communities have done for SADs for road paving. So,
We've also got the roads in the center of the township that are really bad.
that's what I'm saying.
Real
So you
bad.
gotta kind of, you
And those
gotta,
are more pass-through roads too, so.
correct.
You know, sometimes trying to be helpful and caring and nice ends up being a can of worms all in the same.
Well, like I say, I can defend a $500,000 grant. I like that.
Well, it's almost 600,000 when you include the DOR's match. I
With
mean,
the amount that they're kicking in
Yeah.
construction management and so forth, so.
Right.
But I know we have discussed it, but I'll call for more discussion if there is any. If not, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Evening, Board. Bill Serville, resident. I guess what I'm asking is this bridge going to be totally rebuilt, or is it going to be repaired? The reason I ask that is I've heard that when a road reaches end of life, that it's the responsibility of the people that the road passes in front of their property. Just like if there were no road and you were building a road, those people would have to pay for it. The same thing should apply to a bridge. I can read an excerpt from Public Highways and Private Roads, Act 283 of 1909. Section 21-2 says, "A county shall keep in reasonable repair so that they are reasonably safe and convenient for public travel. All county roads, bridges, and culverts that are within the county's jurisdiction are under its care and control and are open to the public for travel." It goes on. But basically, it says the county's responsible. Now, Mr. Huth showed me something from 1951, was it? That adds to it. That's what Mr. Raquest was alluding to about the 50%. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I don't know if that's just for maintenance or if it's for replacement. I guess we're going down a road here that has been brought up in the past, and I don't think that the township should be paying their share of private roads. If it's a maintenance, like capping over here on Town Hall, and then there's another issue. We have a designation of a local road, say Shoreline or Town Hall. They're not really local roads, they're collector roads, because there's only 5 roads that go out onto the beach highway. So whether the township is, or whether the county calls them local roads or not, they're collector roads. And we should work to get those designations changed so that the county picks up more of the cost when they need repair. But in the meantime, I think you should really think hard about this, and maybe there should be an SAD for this. It doesn't sound like this is a big expense, but as you pointed out, the other ones are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. In response to the resident's question, rebuilt versus repaired, this is construction of a new bridge, so kind of address that. Also, you'd asked about the 50% match, maintenance versus replacement. The 50% is for rebuilding, for the constructing a new road. So, for example, regularly, and we sometimes lose sight of it, but we've got trucks that come down and plow, we've got trucks that salt, we've got trucks that do cold patch. The Department of Roads does maintenance, whether it's brush hogging on the side of some of the roads, or cleaning out some of the roadside ditches, or repairing culverts. They do maintenance, and we are not asked to participate. Last issue was the 50% match and the local versus a collector road. So let's make sure that we understand. Town Hall is a collector road. Lands Cruise is a collector road. The county approached this board several years ago and asked if we would participate in the recapping of Town Hall at 50%. Technically, they could do that road at 100% because it is designated a collector road. Now, since that time, it's important to note that Lands Cruise, both on the north and south sides of Metro Parkway, were similarly recapped. Those are also collector roads. We were not asked to participate in those costs. We've received, for example, a passing lane in front of Graham Elementary along Crocker, a right turn lane where Reimold intersects Crocker. We did not participate in those costs. So it's important to recall or to note that the county does regularly spend road in our township, does spend money in our township to improve roads, cap them, add lanes, so on and so forth. The last point I think it's important to note is that we find ourselves oftentimes saying, well, doggone it, that's a road. And we're a township. We're not responsible for roads. We do assessment, and we do building department, and we do water and sewer, but doggone it, our job isn't building roads. That's the county's. They should pay for it. Well, you have to keep in mind that the source of funding for the county is dictated wholly by the state. It's a function of gas taxes, and the actual dollars that the county receives, not adjusted for inflation. But the last time that road funding was addressed by our state legislators was 1997. They set a per gallon tax, and we use less gas now than we did in 1997. And everything's gone up in price, some things more than double. So the dollars that are available at the county level to do this work aren't there. So if we say, doggone it, county, do whatever it takes, the only thing they can do is go to the folks at the state. Certainly there's efficiencies, and we can say, well, let's try to save here and save there. But if asphalt went from $100 to a unit to $200 to a unit, I don't care how many efficiencies you got. When you got less money coming in and materials are twice as much, you can either sit around and watch your roads crumble, or you can say, let's get every grant we can and participate to the extent that we can to get the most dollars we can until somebody else fixes the real source of the problem, which is funding. But make no mistake, when you see a county truck or a state truck or a federal truck or a township truck, I don't care if it's blue or orange or white, they all got their money from the same place. It's from us. And if they get it directly from us for a project that's slated to be done on our road, I at least get a return on that money. But if they take it through some gas tax and share it with this guy, and pretty soon it ends up in a county on the other side of the state, I lost out on that deal. But one way or another, nobody else is paying for our roads than us, either directly or indirectly. So, I'll get off my soapbox. Any other comments? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado to authorize the supervisor to enter into 3 cost-share agreements with Macomb County Department of Roads for concrete repairs on Coal Ridge and Shoreline, East Archer Bridge over Canal, and Camp Street Culvert. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is public comments. We'll open up the floor for anyone in the audience who'd like to address the board. They're limited to 5 minutes. If there are no public comments, we'll turn it over to the board. Are there any board comments, members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, about a week ago, I guess all the board members received a letter from Mr. Senstock in regards to the special election that was held on the millage. The only thing I guess I want to address is the statement says the library should not use taxpayer resources, and that includes professional advice, telephones, etc., and any other sundry items. Then it goes on in bold letters to say the next move is yours. Well, Mr. Chairman, since the library's inception in 2009, all costs incurred by the library have been paid for by either donations, fundraisers, grants, and just recently, penal fines. No general fund money has ever been expended for any equipment or services that are conducted there. The library pays for all of their own goods and services. They prepare their own budget on an annual basis, and that was by recommendation from our auditors. They provide monthly statements based on their committee meetings of all their expenses and transactions that took part during that month. So they pay phone service, they pay internet service, they pay for their copy machine, the computers, the printers, the fax machines, the phones, any books, DVDs, books on tapes, copy paper, printer ink, and all the various sundry items that are addressed. And again, everything goes through the finance department. Mr. Spencer handles everything. And one thing I think you have to remember in the long run, that everything in that library eventually, and still does at this point, is property of the township.
Correct.
And yet we have not expended a penny for it. So I guess, I don't know what move he wants to make, but as one board member, I don't see any reason for any moves.
All right.
That's all.
Was that a letter that went to somebody at the library? I didn't get that letter, so.
I was under the
So-
impression that every board member
I have
received it.
it's a joke. I mean, it looks like it came from, it's like a ransom letter or something. It's
Did
on a
that-
typewriter.
Was it mailed or?
It was mailed to us, yeah.
Oh.
I'll
I'll tell you
home?
what doesn't sit well with me on this is,
Everybody had it.
one of the,
I honestly haven't seen it. Oh, okay.
one of the remarks
I
that he
just-
made was that we should not include professional advice. Well, Mr. Senstock filed a lawsuit against Adam, Jack, and myself, because we're on the election commission, trying to prevent us from providing a voice from the people to make the decision whether or not they wanted a library. Now, the people decided they didn't want a library. They're okay with the,
Well, they didn't want a millage.
yeah, they're okay with a volunteer library, and I can respect that. That's why we wanted to put it on the ballot. We wanted to give them a voice. But not one, but two judges said that this lawsuit was frivolous, and it was specifically a waste of taxpayer money.
That was
And
a
now-
quote of the decision.
Yeah, and now this gentleman that makes this, who's not here, by the way, who sends us this ridiculous letter, says, we don't want you, I don't want you to include professional advice as part of the means for an expenditure. Well, okay, technically, he didn't file a lawsuit against the library, he did it against the election commission, but he wasted thousands of dollars of taxpayer money, thousands. I'm sure Rob is not prepared tonight, but I'm sure he can embellish on that later, at a later time. I mean, it costs us a lot of money to defend ourselves against a lawsuit that should have never been filed in the first place. So, I mean, I agree with Jack, I don't think it's worth more than 5 minutes of our time, but it doesn't set well with me that somebody would have the arrogance to send a letter like this after he wasted so much money. I mean, it's a joke.
Well, I recognize that,
Yeah, we spent more than 5 minutes right now.
well, yeah. I recognize that all of the citizens of the township have a right to voice their concerns.
Absolutely, that's why we put it on the ballot.
Yep, and I'm good with folks will send you emails, sometimes they say, hey, you're doing a great job, sometimes they say something less than you're doing a great job, and that's fine. And I also recognize that some folks are very, very strong supporters of the library. Well, other folks feel strongly that they may not want to contribute to a millage for the library, and that's why we went to an election. So I think that the library provides a great service, but I also recognize that through an open and just about the best way I know, we allowed the folks to voice their opinion. I think they lost by 53 votes, but I don't know if we would have done something radically different and it won by 53 votes that I'd feel a lot different. I like when 80% of the people are in support of something or 80% of the people are against.
Yep.
A vote that's so close just tells me that there's a lot of passion on both sides. I know that I'm approached by sometimes folks in the community that say, boy, I'm so disappointed, I really, really like that library. But I could go 10 more feet at Kroger and someone say, man, I sure hope that library thing doesn't pass. And I don't see that much passion about a lot of things. So people are clearly passionate about the issue. But they voted and that was done. I don't believe that a close no vote against a millage means that people are opposed to the library. They're opposed at this time to paying a millage for a 10-year period. That's how they voted. But I don't believe that that means that we should put it all away and mothball it and take away what I think is an excellent program that a lot of families in our community utilize. And we might argue that maybe we pay the electricity bill, but you know, if that building were sitting empty right now, we'd probably have some lights on in it. We'd probably have to service the alarm. But I think Mr. Swakowski pointed it out best to say, we're not paying for the phones. We don't pay for the IT fella there.
Nope.
They got their own guy. When this issue came up, even to put it on the ballot, they hired their own attorney to bring
Exactly.
that forward. So I think it's worth noting that the board, I think, is responsive to the way the folks voted in the sense that we are not spending money supporting the library. I personally support it, but I think we have to be careful on how much we would spend from the general fund. So,
You know, and what bothers me is a library is a pretty peaceful entity, like a church, or, you know, some would say a park.
yeah.
But he managed to turn this into a hornet's nest too.
Well, but it's, you know what, we've all got things that we're emotional about, and I respect someone's chance to be emotional or a chance to voice themselves, and, but I don't feel that we're mismanaging taxpayer dollars by allowing folks to go there. And I think the amount of traffic that the library generates shows us that there's a lot of residents that appreciate it.
Yep.
Maybe it isn't 50%, and that's okay too, so.
All
But-
that,
but oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, but all of that, on top of all that, though, let's not lose sight of the fact of our greatest asset in the library, in the sense that we have folks that are passionate and do fundraisers, and they do volunteer,
And we
and they
still have
have
a
grown
library.
into what we have, so.
And we still have a library, which is important to know.
Sure. I'm sorry, Mr. York?
After reading that, it's just one person's opinion.
Correct.
All he's saying is that, the township general fund shouldn't be used
And
to fund the library.
just what I said,
and,
Mr.
you
York,
know,
as
no,
one
I'm
member
just-
of
I'm
the Board
just-
of Trustees, just as myself, I just responded
Yeah,
No,
that's
that's
fair.
fine.
on my own. I did not speak for the board.
No, that's all right, and we appreciate that. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn at about 8 PM.
So moved.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Swakowski. Any discussion? No public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
Did that on the typewriter.